Our next speaker is Paula Lloyd. She's a doctoral student researching the suspension of the Inquisition 1674-81 at King's College, London. Researching. And Anna will speak today, as you can see, on Manoel de Gama, Padua's political network, service, subversion, and the disruption of the Portuguese Inquisition.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Professor Stasinski for the opportunity to come here today. In 1674, Pope Clement X took the unprecedented step of suspending the Portuguese Inquisition, pending investigation into the methods it used against its primary victims, the New Christians. In the early modern world, where politics can't be separated from religion and economics, and where, for the New Christians, political could in fact be defined in an extreme sense as the very struggle for survival, it's striking that missing from even the most recent interpretations of this suspension is any sense of New Christian political agency. But as Claude Stasinski has shown, if we explore the role of the New Christian procurators, that's representatives of the community, negotiating general pardons or relief from inquisitorial persecution, we quickly see how moments of crisis brought together a leadership united at the very least in their ethnicity. Such men used the financial and social heft gained in the service economies that had built the Iberian empires, not in this case to accumulate more social capital, but to engage in political lobbying for their own communal and personal ends. Indeed, in this paper, I want to emphasize not only the high-level social strategies used to press the New Christian agenda, but to focus on the importance of the business skills, practices, and most importantly, the connections made by the procurator Manoel de Gama de Padua, bridging vast psychological, geographical, and religious chasms, which helped him to create a politically agile opposition that could actually pose real transformative challenges to the seemingly all-powerful Inquisition. This, then, was business as a means to an end rather than an end in itself. For Procurator Manoel de Gama de Padua, opposition to the Inquisition might have been forged in the prison cells of the Holy Office, but it was his activities as a businessman, relying on a flexible attitude to institutional controls, adaptability, versatility, risk-taking, and razor-sharp negotiating skills that would break open the Inquisition's autonomy and bring debate about its future into the public domain. The 1670s were tumultuous times. Prince Regent Don Pedro's deposition of his brother, King Afonso VI, was a public relations disaster which had left him politically weak and personally insecure. Portuguese economic instability was biting hard. The New Christians, already for many the enemy within, as ever provided a useful focus to take attention away from government failures. In August 1671, a break-in and desecration at the parish church of Odivelas gave the politically vulnerable Prince Pedro the opportunity to point the finger of blame. He drew up an aggressive act that proposed that all those New Christians who had been convicted de vehementi in the Inquisition should be expelled along with their children and grandchildren. The Inquisition quickly followed Pedro's lead, making a rash of arrests targeting this same section of the New Christians community, the Lisbon merchants. The New Christians, stigmatized and attacked on all sides, mobilized their not inconsiderable defenses and sought a general pardon. Despite Pedro's apparent animosity, the New Christians under Manoel de Gama de Padua were able to gain permission from the prince to pursue their claim in Rome with the Pope. To understand how this significant royal volte-face was possible, we must turn to de Gama de Padua's biography. De Gama de Padua is the first procurator to be mentioned in the papers at the Torre do Tombo with reference to these pardon negotiations. Born in 1607 in Lole, in the Algarve, into a family of New Christian silk merchants, he quickly rose to a central role in the financial machinery of the Portuguese state, despite his status as a New Christian and a short stint in the Inquisition jails in his early 30s. But after 60 years of Spanish government, the 1640 restoration of the Portuguese monarchy opened up society in a new way, offering opportunities for outsiders and entrepreneurs to flourish. Lucrative contracts to supply troops with sustenance and weaponry allowed men like de Gama de Padua the chance to scale up their activities and, importantly, a voice and a means to be heard. By 1648, de Gama de Padua had served as the Treasurer General for a new tax imposed on sugar imported to Portugal and as a banker to João IV. But also importantly, he functioned from early on as a spokesman and organizer for all of the businessmen of Lisbon, new and old Christian alike. In 1657, he organized a loan of 81,000 cruzados to pay for the India fleet, and served again as a treasurer for the Homens de Negocio. While between 1660 and 1662, he was the treasurer of the Alfândega of Lisbon, his name appearing throughout the Conselho de Fazenda documents as a facilitator of multiple negotiations. Here then was a powerful man trusted and chosen to negotiate on behalf of a very powerful, ethnically mixed community. These were skills that would be used again when he became procurator, when he handpicked the men that would also act as procurators beside him, who are remarkable not just for their connections within the new Christian community, but also their extensive ability to form connections outside of it. De Gama's particular skill seemed to be in the art of deal-making and harmonizing interests, and listening to the concerns and priorities of others, as well as factoring in his own. This can be seen to great effect in the famous Brazil Company, set up through the 1649 Alvara, which saw investors exempted from inquisitorial confiscation of goods. While historian Leonor Freire Costa rightly sees this as interest group activity by a heterogeneous group of merchants adept at removing institutional obstacles in their path, she's wrong to remove the new Christians from the equation, as Carsten Wilk has just shown Vieira's involvement. As Padre Manuel Fernandes, Pedro's confessor, described, de Gama de Padua negotiated and settled the whole deal, then King João IV publicised it. Here was a deal that can be read as many things, as it served many masters. It promoted the Brazil trade for the king, protected the vulnerable capital of those involved, Genoese and English merchants and new Christians alike. This was a favour that would be returned when it came to the 1671 proposal to expel the new Christians, when the English special envoy pressured Pedro to allow the new Christians to stay in Portugal, or at least to make up his mind quickly in order that trading between the English and new Christians could carry on and Portuguese trade could be free to develop. Negotiating talent wasn't the only adaptable skill de Gama de Padua had honed during his career. Like new Christian procurators before him, de Gama understood that his enemy's Achilles' heel was one of the constant struggle to maintain power and prestige in the face of other institutions, particularly the crown. The new Christian attack of the 1670s was a direct challenge to this inquisitorial prestige. The new Christians asked the crown to break trust with the Inquisition, undermining its autonomy and seeking its reform in line with the Roman Holy Office. As de Gama said, the years show the experience of all those honours, lives lost, that change is needed. So why not do it? There must be a better style, and who better to judge it than the head of the church? And as James has shown, this was not something that was unknown at the Curia, where Catholics often called on the intervention of Rome. Almost as soon as de Gama and his fellow procurators took their negotiations to Rome, they sought the protection of the papal bull initially issued by Paul III, which from the foundation of the Inquisition had invoked immunity from prosecutions to new Christians and the families of the men seeking papal justice. Whilst this could be used and abused by some, persecution was a very real concern. All the procurators of the early 1670s represented family members who were in the Inquisition prisons or had recently been inside them. Indeed, after the failure of the pardon negotiations in 1681, de Gama's own sons appeared at the Congregazione of the Holy Office in Rome, seeking papal protection from the Inquisition, fearing reprisals. The de Gama family were indeed no strangers to the sharp end of inquisitorial justice. Manuel de Gama de Padua had been tried for Judaizing early on in his career in 1637 and released after 2 years. In addition to this, his father, Francisco Sueiro, brother George Lopes de Gama, and brother-in-law Manuel Rodrigues da Costa had all spent considerable periods in prison, offering ample motivation for opposing the Inquisition. Indeed, de Gama de Padua's anti-Inquisition activities seem to have begun early in his career, as he was a shady figure in the trial of João IV's most prominent banker, Duarte de Silva, in 1647, and further trial for breaking the Inquisition's codes of secrecy in 1652. De Gama de Padua had no familial ties to de Silva, but on the eve of de Silva's 1647 arrest, da Gama de Padua warned him about what was about to happen, and much more dangerously still, he gave information to de Silva's wife every day about her incarcerated husband's well-being. Da Gama, then, was clearly a man who was prepared to take significant risks to ensure the Inquisition did not get the upper hand. More seriously still, de Silva and da Gama de Padua were involved with an Inquisition notary, Gaspar Clement, who was tried for giving away the secrets of the Inquisition and fraternizing with men of the nation. Da Gama de Padua and de Silva were not the only ones corrupting Inquisition staff and plying them for information. The other procurators in the 1670s were up to the same tricks. Antonio Rodriguez Marx paid the alcaide to deliver information to his relatives in the cells, and Pedro Álvares Caldas befriended ex-Inquisition notary, the famous Pedro Lupin Frere, and sent him to Rome, although he seems to have acted at best as a very loose cannon, at worst as a double agent. The clues seem to suggest that da Gama and his fellow procurators purposefully trawled for hard information about the Inquisition procedures, just as they might about business competitors. Scrutiny of the complaints of the New Christians sent to Rome shows an in-depth consideration of inquisitorial procedures, with very particular examples of manipulation of single testimonies and inquisitorial corruption handed to the Curia. This knowledge was obviously gained first-hand, but also must have been augmented through discussions with people on the inside of the Inquisition. Could it be that da Gama de Padua and his fellow procurators' whole strategy was to strike at their opponent's core value of secrecy? The 1640 Regimento of the Inquisition asserts, "No santo officio não é coisa em que o segredo não seja necessário." In the Santo Officio, there is nothing in which secrecy is not necessary. Indeed, inquisitorial secrecy was to become a key battleground for the Pope and cardinals, who pushed for 8 years to see original trial documents and to understand the methodology employed by the Inquisition. In many ways, the Inquisition and New Christian merchants were rivals in a sort of information society, both seeking to control flows and access to information, albeit for very different ends. For men such as da Gama de Padua, information was the lifeblood of their business networks, which ranged over empires, a currency of trust, and a tool in the kit to use against competitors. But ultimately, it was a tool for protection, more valuable for them in a way than money. Subverting or laying bare the Inquisition and codes of secrecy was not only an act of defiance, but also a powerful weapon in their battle for survival, and perhaps ultimately all in a day's work for the likes of da Gama de Padua. De Silva and da Gama's anti-Inquisition connection did not end there. After de Silva's release from the Inquisition prisons after 5 years, it was da Gama de Padua who acted as guarantor that de Silva would not flee. In 1661, de Silva did leave Portugal to administer Catherine of Braganza's dowry on the occasion of her marriage to Charles II, and in 1672, the first move towards a general pardon came from England, from Catherine's court, where a number of the New Christian procurators had relatives. The offer to set up a Portuguese East India Company in emulation of the Brazil Company of the 1640s was brought to Portugal from London in the hands of Jesuits, Padre Baltasar da Costa and Pedro Jusart. Offers such as this have often led to accusations that the New Christians acted against the Inquisition simply for financial gain. But if you look at the fact that a number of offers to stop the Inquisition came from this same London community, and then if you look at the further offers that the New Christians make, it seems to be more that they're offering expedient things that will tantalise the markets that they're playing to. In one recent excellent study by Pulido Serrano, there's a suggestion that all the concessions that the advocates requested insistently throughout the 17th century, the freedom of circulation of people and capital, generalised pardons for crimes of heresy, and changes in inquisitorial procedure served a clearly defined economic agenda which would chiefly benefit these self-same men of business, seems to be a gross oversimplification. For Manoel da Gama de Padua and the New Christian procurators in the 1670s, they had a clearly defined agenda, but not, as Serrano asserts, to improve their financial position or status, although they may have done along the way, but to ameliorate the conditions of their fellow New Christians. Procurators of the 1670s might have had multiple motivations, but uppermost was the fact that they were clearly acting in favour of a community brought together through victimization at the hands of the Inquisition. So the offer to set up an East India Company was one of just a number of proposals made by the New Christians, which they pushed or abandoned according to the audience they approached. The Portuguese crown wished to bolster trade and its power in India, so the New Christians offered it the wherewithal to do this. They later laid aside this offer and offered to pay for troops to fight the Turks, or to assist with paying for the new Polish king to ascend his throne, this time making an offer to tantalize a pope rather than a king. As Mercedes Arenal suggests, the ultimate skills of these men were their adaptability and versatility. There's no denying that these schemes would benefit them, but to understand them one-dimensionally is short-sighted. Interestingly, the Catholic Church swam in this same mixed pond of business, belief and politics, and was both a source of business and, more importantly, offered some protection to the New Christians, as we've seen. Many New Christian families placed multiple children into the church and convents in the hope that they would be spared persecution by the Inquisition. In Portugal, money made through trade brought New Christians access to what was theoretically one of the most closed areas of society. For the procurators, these networks with old Christians from religious orders inside and outside Portugal were vital to mounting their defence against the Inquisition. So de Gama had strong connections with the church from the beginning of his career, belonging to confraternities in Lule and then in Lisbon. And this was something that was clearly important to New Christians, the membership of confraternities, playing a crucial role in regulating social, political and economic equilibrium in Portugal. And as Guimarães says, this was just the sort of institution that was ambiguous, with a capacity to serve multiple purposes, that the New Christian procurators looked for. But they not only looked for membership of confraternities, they also looked, as is well known, to religious orders such as the Jesuits. Foremost amongst the Portuguese Jesuits connected to the New Christians was, of course, Padre Antonio de Gama, the great man of letters. Vieira knew de Gama de Padua very well through their involvement with the foundation of the Brazil Company. Okay. And Vieira was very important in that he was able to open up avenues for de Gama that might otherwise have been closed. In 1671, de Gama visited Rome and obviously met up with Vieira. Vieira wrote several times to Dom Rodrigo de Menezes on behalf of Manuel de Gama de Padua. Menezes was one of the highest nobles in Portugal who had been in favour from João IV's reign, and by 1671 served along with a select group of aristocrats as a gentleman of the king's bedchamber and on the Council of State. Vieira wrote to Dom Rodrigo de Menezes to ask him to help de Gama de Padua, saying that the New Christian businessman was one of the first shareholders of the Brazil Company and had done a lot to help Prince Teodosio and João IV. Between 1670 and 75, de Gama de Padua was put in charge of the rents of the Royal Chapel, a position which could quite probably have come from this connection with de Menezes, and also brought him into immediate contact with another Jesuit, Padre Manuel Fernandes, royal confessor, who, along with de Gama, was at the heart of the pardon negotiations. So Manuel de Gama de Padua died as a Fidalgo de Casa del Rey, with membership of the Order of Christ, an apparently exemplary Catholic nobleman, in 1679. His tomb in the convent of San Francisco in Lisbon states that here lies a man with noble titles and with a connection to his great patron, the Crown. As this convent was destroyed in the earthquake, it's hard to have any idea who de Gama socialised with in his death. Although his highly ornate and centrally located convent, it suggests that he must have been reasonably well connected. But this paper has explored the role of the New Christian procurator Manuel de Gama de Padua in disrupting the Inquisition, helping to secure a suspension of the apparently mighty institution for 8 years. I've sought to demonstrate the way that de Gama de Padua gained agency through a set of circumstances created by the needs of state in the Restoration period in Portugal and the race to build and maintain empires in the 16th and 17th century Europe. I've attempted to draw wider conclusions about the nature of pardon negotiations, moving them away from more financial explanations and demonstrating the political dimensions of New Christian activities through drawing out the specific connections between de Gama de Padua and the wave of repression within Lisbon business community in 1672, and ongoing opposition to the Inquisition dating back to his own imprisonment in the 1630s. I believe the evidence presented in this paper suggests two main conclusions. The first is that men such as Gama de Padua that emerged were highly skilled political actors who had a long-standing agenda to stop the Inquisition due to the fact they saw it as an ill in society in which they lived. Secondly, Gama de Padua used the power and wealth he had accumulated to build political networks, finessing deals at the highest levels, but also the skills that he had honed in the marketplace of empire to help him break Inquisition codes of secrecy, run communications in and out of the Inquisition cells, and corrupt the Inquisition's ministers to show it up for the same venality and corruption his fellow New Christians were constantly labelled with. But Gama de Padua's connections weren't only with the crown or merchant. One of the striking things about him is his immersion into channels of sociability such as confraternities, charities, and even his burial location that suggest strong mechanisms of inclusion and coexistence even in such a racist society. Gama de Padua operated across boundaries with different communities and identifications in his day-to-day life, but at a point of crisis he could draw from those with convergent interests within these communities to create an anti-Inquisition group of considerable power and reach.